everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel and another episode of my Advent calendar countdown. My name is Sari and like I said, I'm counting down days until Christmas and featuring one of my favorite knitting patterns and designs on every day. And today's pattern is the Poetry Pullover. And I have two versions of it. This is the mohair version and this is the original DK weight version. So you can find both of those patterns on Ravelry as well as on sarinotebund.com. You don't need both of the patterns. There's basically nothing else different in them except the different yarns. So this one is knitted with fingering weight yarn and mohair. This is a single strand of DK weight yarn. So if you are okay doing that substitution on your own, you do not need both of the patterns. Just get one of them and you can knit both versions using just that one pattern. One of the reasons why I have them as two separate patterns is because the drape of the pullover is very different depending on whether you have the mohair version or the DK weight version, and they look quite different in photos. And especially on Ravelry, you choose the pattern that you make based on just one photo. So you're scrolling through the listings of all the designs and you see just like a little square photo, and most of the people base their decision whether that's interesting or not based on just that little photo. And since these two look very different, the drape is very different, I don't want people skipping the pattern because they want something with mohair and more drape, and then they see the photo of this one and it doesn't look like that. So that's why there are two different versions of it, even though there's really nothing, no big difference in the pattern itself. So you can choose just one, and if you're okay, like I said, if you're okay doing the yarn substitution on your own, then just go for it. It's just to cater to different audiences. So if a person is looking for a mohair sweater, then they'll see a photo of this one and decide to make it rather than, or if they want to do like more, something with more stitch definition, then maybe this is what tickles their fancy more. Anyway, this is the Poetry Pullover and it's based on one of my most popular patterns, the Poet Sweater, and I made the Poet Sweater. It was released already in 2018 and it's been one of my best sellers. The whole Poet family has been like one of my most popular pattern families, and there are quite a lot of different patterns in that family already. There's the original Poet Sweater as well as the mohair sweater of that one, the Poetry Pullover, and of course this is the circular yoke version. So the original Poet is a raglan, so this has a circular yoke, and then this year I put out a new version. It's the Poetic Pullover, which has a European shoulder construction. But the Poetry Pullover has a circular yoke, so you start at the neck and then you work the yoke and separate the sleeves from the body and then just work the pattern in the round. And this have kind of like a slightly like a bell sleeve, so the sleeve is straight until the cuff and you do decreases just before the cuff, so it creates kind of like a nice bell shape. And I think the shape of the sleeves is it's more visible on the DK weight version, whereas this one has more drape, so you don't really see the shape as well as with this one. So this is knitted with Tuku wool DK, which is a very rustic yarn, so it really holds its shape very well, and that's why you can really see the shape of the sleeve, whereas the mohair version, it's knitted with a strand of fingering weight yarn as well as a strand of silk mohair. You can also use Suri alpaca or something like that, whatever you want to use. If you don't like mohair, Suri alpaca is a really good option, or just like a lace weight strand of alpaca or cashmere is also a good option or substitute for mohair if you don't really want to use mohair for your sweater. So this one has quite a lot more drape compared to this version of the sweater. So the poetry name comes because it's from the poet family, and I didn't want to call it something like poet circular yoke or something like that. It's not very, it doesn't really roll off your tongue nicely, so that's why it's called poetry. The poetry pullover is actually, it's a lot easier than it looks like. I know that it might look a bit intimidating, it might look a bit complicated because it has an all over texture, but this is something that when I teach classes, I rate the class as a beginner level class. So if you know your basic knit and purl stitches and you want to do a bit of lace, this is actually a really good place to start. So you only need it on the right side, it's all the time in the round, you don't have to worry about wrong side rows at all. The lace pattern is a lot easier than it looks like. So if you are good with reading charts and you want to venture a bit beyond just basic knit and purl stitches, I think this sweater is a really good place to start. And like I said, I've been teaching a poetry pullover class quite a many times now, and I think the most common feedback from my students has been that it's so much more simple than it looks like. So it looks way more complicated than it is, and it's something that knits up really quickly and it's super fun to make. So if you are looking for something a bit behind just like basic sweaters, basic stockinette stitch sweaters, then I think this is a good place to start with a bit more textural knits. And if you are more advanced knitter, this is such a fun, relaxing, it's quite the pattern becomes very intuitive, so you don't have to keep checking your chart all the time. So it's a very relaxing and fun little sweater to knit. I prefer the mohair version because of the drape, and I think I've been wearing this one a lot more than the DK weight yarn version, but you can choose whatever you like the more. I think if I were to knit the DK weight sweater again, I would probably choose something a bit less rustic than a Finship wool. Maybe go for like a yak silk blend, I think would be really nice, and it would also give it a bit more drape than just like a rustic wool yarn does. But that's today's pattern, and you can get it with a 24% discount both on Ravelry as well as on sorrynotebook.com. You can pick either the original poetry version or this mohair version, or both, but like I said, you don't really need both of them, just choose one. There's really not that much difference between the patterns. The code for the pattern is poetry, and it's valid until the end of tomorrow. So the whole day today and the whole day tomorrow, end of the day finish time. And I will post links to both the mohair version and the original poetry pullover below this video, as well as the discount code, so you can easily check them out from there. And tomorrow I will be back with the next part of this little advent calendar, and I can't wait to show you what I have lined up next. Okay. See you, bye.